Welcome to the Growth Series podcast, where we talk about simple systems, smart technology, and real human connection, all working together to help businesses grow in a predictable way. I'm your host, Josh Jackson, founder of Red Letter AI. For almost 20 years, I've lived by the idea of high tech, high touch. I help business owners build clean, efficient systems that create consistency, reduce pressure, and make growth feel easier. My focus is simple: bringing clarity to where there's confusion, give teams better tools, and help leaders spend more time doing what they're great at instead of fighting fires. So if you're a leader who wants more control, more structure, and more effective team, you're in the right place. Today, I'm joined by Frank, and I'm going to edit this. How do you pronounce your last name? Dadah. Okay. Today, I'm joined by Frank Dadah, Senior Vice President of Client Services at MCG, one of the most respected leadership and culture development firms in the country. Frank helps organizations grow stronger by developing their leaders, aligning executive teams, and building cultures that actually work in real life, not just on paper. He's personally sponsored and supported more than 100 companies for each of the last year, from fastest growing firms to Fortune 10 organizations, helping them build better managers and better teams and better results. Frank, I'm excited to have you on the podcast today.
Josh, can't tell you how excited I am. I appreciate you having me on.
Well, I would love to start off with kind of looking at the big picture. So when you talk to leaders at companies, doing 25 million or more, what is the biggest problem they have with their teams and their culture right now?
That's a great question. The number one thing I hear from leaders in today's organizations are they have to do more with less. And it's less employees, it's less hiring, it's less tools. And so they're looking for ways to continue their forward momentum, focused on culture, focused on development, but getting the final results with less.
Yeah. So, you mentioned a few things here, and I want to touch on them. So you talk, we talked previously, and you mentioned things like mission and value and vision. So why are some of these companies they misunderstand what it takes to build that strong company culture?
That's a great question. So a lot of organizations think that putting a pool table in an empty office space is building culture. That's really not what culture is. Culture is understanding why your organization is what it is, what they're trying to achieve, what the goal of the company is, and making sure that everybody understands what's important to the organization. That could be giving back. That could be making sure that you're a leader in whatever industry that you're in. It could be making sure that you help grow and develop people within your organization, and that people understand that when they do the things that they do for your organization, they are doing it for the right reason.
Yeah. So why you got to answer this for me, because I've never understood this. So when times get tough in a business that does 25 million, you would think there'd be no issues, but they have a lot of issues. But when times get tough, why is training development the first things companies cut out? Why are they cutting out leadership training? Is that a big mistake?
Huge mistake. I'm glad that you brought that up. So organizations in the short term see leadership development, see training as a cost rather than a benefit. And so what we've seen time and again is that the more organizations invest in their leaders, invest in their training, invest in the development of their people, the more ROI there is. The problem is that the ROI isn't immediate. And so what they do is they say, hey, if we're not going to get an immediate impact for our dollar spent, we're going to cut this cost. And then they see the challenge of that cost, weeks, months, or years down the road.
Okay, that makes sense. So talk to me about MCG. You focus on leadership, effectiveness. What does that mean? And what is one of the main things that you do to help a company in its leadership or fix its leadership?
Yeah, I appreciate that. So MCG Partners is a leadership effectiveness, culture, and talent optimization firm. And so leadership effectiveness is executive coaching, executive team alignment, leadership development, succession planning, manager training, manager onboarding. These are all things to help leaders and organizations get better at what they do. The culture piece is what you've already talked about. It's that mission, vision, values, culture. And it's also that inclusive piece that organizations were focused on in 2020 and have since started to focus a little bit differently on the inclusive piece. And then talent optimization is really all about how people, not just leaders, but people show up to work, how they behave under stress, and how you can help support them as they grow and develop through that stress.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up the word talent, because in our previous call, I wrote down this term, and I want you to talk more about it. You use a predictive index tool.
Yeah.
And how does knowing somebody's behavior help a company decide who to hire and who to promote?
That's a great question. So the predictive index is a behavioral assessment tool. It is a full life cycle of employment tool. It's from the selection process all the way through to the offboarding process. And what it does is it allows you to understand how people tend to show up to work under normal circumstances, how they behave, how they like to communicate, how they receive information, the best situations to put them in from a behavioral perspective. And then it also helps you understand how they behave under stress. And so imagine this. Imagine if on a normal day, you're easy to talk to, you're easygoing, you're fun at work, but under stress, we know that you get really quiet. You become an introvert. And so if I see you become an introvert during a stressful situation, knowing that means that I don't need to overreact and worry that something might be wrong with you. I just have to understand that that's how you behave under stress, and I can help you through that process if I know that ahead of time.
So does a predictive index tool also work with being hangry?
It does not work.
Term, let me tell you.
It does not work with being hangry. No.
So who do you do this tool with? Like, you teach the managers these concepts to understand them better?
Yeah, so the tool is great for anyone at any level within the organization. But the reality is we do teach leaders and managers how to understand the tool, how to use the tool, how to use it effectively in team meetings, one-on-one meetings, through the selection process and through the onboarding process.
Okay, that's awesome. That makes sense. And another thing that I wanted to touch on that I found fascinating, because it's something I have little experience in, is you help companies with succession plans. But I'm curious, like, what is the biggest mistake a company makes when trying to find their next leader, or maybe even exit strategy?
Yeah, so the succession planning mistake that most organizations have is they don't have a plan at all. They assume that the leaders in vital roles are there today and will be there tomorrow. And we know from experience that that's just not the case. And so the reality is that you need to figure out what your critical roles are within the organization, who's currently in those roles, how long those people will be in those roles from a forecast perspective, and then who's the next successor within the organization, who's ready now, who's ready in a year, and who's ready in 3 to 5 years. Once you identify those players, whether they're internal or if you need to go to the external market to identify those folks, you can start to put a plan in place on helping coach them based on their state of readiness.
Gotcha. Do you happen to have like a case study that you could share with us? Maybe a common problem that companies have quite a bit, someone you've worked with recently on the issue that they came to you with. What did you guys do? And then what success are they seeing today?
So it's a great question. So there's a software company that comes to mind. When anyone ever asks me this question, I think of this organization because it really is a success story that I like to share. So the CHRO came to us and said, hey, we've got an executive leadership team that we think they all want the best for the organization, but we're not necessarily all rowing in the same direction. There's a little bit of misalignment, and there's some internal challenges within the executive team. And so what we suggested was, let's go in and let's do a needs analysis for the executive team, understand who each player is on the team, understand what they think their role is on the team, and understand what the rest of the executive team thinks their role is on the team. And then let's talk about where there's alignment and then where there's challenges. And let's put together an alignment program for the executive team, for the group, and then do individual coaching for everybody. And so when we started, there was attrition within the organization. There was challenges with messaging from the executive team, and there was infighting within the executive team. After the 18-month program, the executives were aligned. Their communication downstream was much better. and there was less attrition throughout the organization, which, as you can imagine, led to higher revenue growth within the organization.
Wow, that's quite a testimonial, especially getting executive teams on the same page and stop the infighting.
Yeah, there's a lot.
You get some egos involved in there, and that's a whole mess.
That's exactly what I was going to say. There's egos, there's, folks who think that their way is better than somebody else's way, and getting people to understand that what's best for the organization is growth and development, and putting egos aside is what's best for the organization.
Wow. That's a feat right there if you can do that.
For sure.
So talk to me about what's next for MCG. If we're sitting down a year from today, what does success look like, or what's growth look like for you guys?
Yeah, so success for us is being able to have more of those testimonials where organizations have come to us with a problem. We've been able to help fill in some of the gaps, and they've gone out into the marketplace and said, geez, you got to work with MCG. Here's what our problem was, and here's how they helped us get over that challenge. We're always looking for revenue growth. If you and I are sitting down a year from now and we've seen an increase of 15 to 20% revenue growth, I think that's a success. We have a lot of tremendous coaches and subject matter experts in our organization, and we keep them busy every single day. Adding additional headcount certainly will be a success for us. And knowing that we've made a difference to more than one organization is success.
Yeah, that's awesome. So I have a few more questions before we wrap up the call today. And I call these my pay it forward questions. So for a leader listening right now that's in an organization, what's the single most important thing that they should be doing every day to improve their team?
Yeah, so it starts with them, I would say. So focus on your own growth and development. Understand that you're not expected to have all of the answers. And it's okay to say, I don't know, let me get you that answer to a subordinate. I think when you show vulnerability to a subordinate and you show them that it's safe to not know all of the answers, you get more out of your employees. Once you've understood that as a leader within an organization and you've given your folks permission to fail, or at least show that they also have gaps, your team becomes much more cohesive. If you have a cohesive team, you are much more efficient and you're able to tackle challenges and problems much faster.
Gosh, I agree with you 100%. I'm just putting myself in that position. And if I come to a leader and I ask a question, I would much rather them say, that's a really great question. Let me get the answer and I'll get back to you on that, versus making something up and I know that they made it up and it sounds awful, right?
Imagine if that leader said to you, instead of let me go get the answer for you, imagine if that leader said, why don't you and I go get the answer together? Yeah. How much more impactful would that be?
I agree. That's fantastic. Then becomes a teamwork thing and you feel like you're involved.
Exactly. And now you've got buy-in from your employee. Your employee has skin in the game.
That is a gold nugget right there. Hope someone's picking that up.
Thank you.
So then what is the single best piece of business advice you have ever received?
Wow, that's a great question. The best piece of business advice I've received is don't be afraid to fail. Learn from your mistakes. Make a million mistakes. Don't make the same mistake a million times. And so what that taught me was the person I was working for said, hey, if you're not taking risks, you're not doing your job. If you're taking risks, we know you're going to fail some portion of the time, but we're behind you and we know that your effort is there and the outcomes will come. Just learn from those mistakes and don't make them over and over again. Because when you start making the same mistake over and over, it shows that you're really not invested in the outcome of that endeavor.
Right. Speaking from myself again, me being a recovering perfectionist every single day, that's a very hard thing for me to do, but I still continue to try and do it. And, I use the term fail forward. Like, I'm going to fail, but as long as like you said, if I don't make the same mistake twice, then that's okay. And then I'm failing forward. And I keep telling myself failure is part of the equation to success. So, I love the advice and I would endorse that 100%. And then my second to last question is, if you had a chance to talk to your 15-year-old self today, what would you tell him?
Follow your passion, regardless of what it is, regardless of what other people might think of that passion. If it's important to you at 15, it's probably going to be important to you at 20 and 25. Follow it and see it all the way through.
That's awesome. Fantastic advice. And lastly, where can people find more about you, if they want to know more, or if they want to have, sit down and find out how you can help their company.
Yeah, I appreciate you asking that. Thank you. So you can find us, you can read all about us at mcgpartners.com. Our CEO, Chuck Moeller, wrote a book called The Agile Leader. He is very much a thought partner in this industry. And so the book that he wrote is all about how being an agile leader helps grow the organization. So I would recommend anyone who's interested in that to take a look at it. It is on Amazon. And then you can always find me on LinkedIn. I'm happy to connect with people, and I'm happy to just have general conversations. It doesn't always have to lead to business. It's always good if it does, but if somebody just has a question and I can help them, I'm happy to do that.
Yeah, that's awesome. We'll have all of those notes and links down in the description below, so don't need to frantically go grab your pen. Just look down in the notes below, and we'll have all those contact details. So Frank, it's been really great having you on today. Super insightful. I love your company and what you guys are doing, making so many impacts and changes. So thank you for joining us today.
Thanks for having me, Josh. I appreciate it.